Hello world, and welcome to the What is a Church series. This is the series where I work my way through the book of Acts to see what a church is supposed to be according to the book of Acts. And guess what? This week we're going to make it to the end. I've read the last 5 chapters and I'll give a quick overview of what there is, and that'll be then pretty much the end. And then next week I will be giving a very in-depth summary of everything I found. So for now, what do we have? Well, we start with Acts 24, and we pretty much see that the high priest and the elders come to where Felix is with Paul. They ask to get Paul in their custody. He's being accused of many things, but they can't prove them, and Felix doesn't give Paul over, but he's keeping Paul pretty much in his custody for about 2 years, and is replaced then by Festus. The Jewish leaders again try to get Paul. Festus doesn't want to, and pretty much though leaves it up to Paul and says, would you go with his men? And Paul says no, and Paul makes an appeal to Caesar, because being a Roman citizen he can do this, which means his case is now going to be seen by Caesar. Some point Agrippa comes to visit Festus, and they listen to Paul. Festus thinks Paul is mad, and Agrippa sort of questions if Paul's trying to convert him to Christianity. Both the men, though, do agree that Paul should be free, had it not been that he made an appeal to Caesar. But Paul knows he's got to go to Rome. So they set sail going to Rome. At some point the weather gets rough. They want to keep sailing. Paul says don't. They go anyway, end up in a big storm. A lot of problems going on. They haven't eaten for a long time. Paul keeps trying to encourage them. Eventually the sailors want to actually run the ship ashore. Paul warns the centurion, who stops them. And they end up on an island of Malta. There, while helping the natives, the locals who live there, Paul is bitten by a snake, and while everyone waits for him to die, he doesn't. This leads them to bring many people on the island to Paul, who heals these people, including the father of the chief of that island. So because of that, the locals provide them with what they need, and off they go sailing on further to their next destination. And eventually end up in Rome. In Rome, Paul calls for the Jewish leaders to talk to them. They've apparently heard nothing from Jerusalem, and they aren't out to get Paul, as has been the case everywhere. So Paul talks to them. Some of them actually get saved, and Paul starts a community there working in Rome. And we see in the end that it says Paul had been there for 2 years, and that's where Acts ends. And that's pretty much a story. There's not a lot to tell from out of this, because we're pretty much just getting Paul's journey, how he ends up in Rome, why he ends up in Rome. There's nothing new about churches or anything in there. I do think it's interesting that we hear the term the way, and they're considered a sect within Judaism. Now, the Jews considered this to be a sect of Judaism in the beginning. The term the way was actually used by the people in this group, in the sect, the Christians. The Christian was actually a derogatory term given to them by others, which typical us we embrace. I mean, we do that very often as well, with being proud as Bible thumpers, or proud Jesus freaks, or proud Christians, but we're meant to actually be derogatory. Having said that, though, they did refer to themselves as the way, probably because they were following the way, the truth, and the life, Jesus. And to be honest, the Judaism only dispelled them and no longer considered them sects once they started to reach the Gentiles. While it was purely a Jewish movement originally, which you saw in the beginning of Acts, they were actually considered just a sect of Judaism. Something else we see, that even in custody, Paul continues to preach the gospel, to the point that he actually is trying to convert Agrippa and confronts Agrippa with some of his sins. So it's actually quite interesting to note. And one last point that I found was interesting, when Paul ends up in Rome, it says he was providing for himself. In other words, he didn't live off the people there, people getting saved, but still he provided for himself, which I think is a very noble thing, and I do really recommend a lot of people to preachers to do that, is try to provide for yourself, do not live off people. Anyway, that's pretty much what we read. As I've said, the big summary of what I've now learned as to what a church is in Acts, I'll do in one separate video next week, so that I can take time to really just go in and really talk about the stuff I've seen point by point. And I hope you'll tune in for that one. And for the rest, I just wish you a good day. Keep well, and God bless. It's September, and September is Leukemia Awareness Month. So if you're not registered as a stem cell donor, please do consider doing so, because you may save someone's life.